Hello fellow geeks, the Arty Dan here for another review on the Geek Legion of Doom channel, and big thanks to Leo for hooking me up with this movie. And I have to say, Leo, you did well this time. This was a far more enjoyable film than the last one. So what was the film? Well, it was the 2005 Japanese fantasy action film, The Great Yokai War. Yokai being the Japanese word for strange apparition, essentially supernatural spirits from Japanese folklore. Now, the cool thing about yokai is they don't have particular shapes. They commonly look a bit like animals, but they can also have human form. Others can take the appearance of something more inanimate, and this movie features yokai of all different kinds. Now, a bit about the movie. This is the 2005 version, which now has a 2001 sequel with the subtitle of Guardians. Now, they're both directed by famous Japanese auteur Takashi Miike. And I know you're asking, where have I heard that name before? Well, let me rattle off a few of his movies and that you might have heard of. It's Audition, 13 Assassins, Ichi the Killer, One Missed Call, Lesson of the Evil. He also did an episode of Masters of Horror and is famous for a lot of gory Japanese gangster films from the 90s, so he's kind of a big deal. He's directed around 140 different movies and TV shows. Now, I'm going to read my prepared synopsis of the film, and I'm going to overlay some footage to hide the fact that I'm reading directly off the screen in front of me. The movie follows a young boy, Takashi, who has moved to a small village with his mother and grandfather. He suffers a bit of bullying at school, but one evening during the village's annual festival, he is crowned the Kirin Rider, meaning that he's chosen to protect the town. But what this really means is that he has to traverse to a mountain nearby to retrieve a sword from a goblin. While on his way to the mountain, he stumbles across a few yokai, including a cat-like creature who rubs people's shins, a kappa, which is like a human-shaped monster with a turtle shell and a plate on its head, and more importantly, he meets Kawahime, the river princess, who's pretty good looking. They travel with him to the goblin's cave, but as he gets the sword, he's attacked by another group of yokai. These are the bad ones, led by Agi, who you might recognize from Kill Bill, and her machinery-style yokai. Unbeknownst to Takashi, he stumbled into a great yokai war, hence the title of the film, and it's up to him to rally the yokai against, well, the big evil yokai, who wants to plunge the world, or at least Tokyo, into darkness. So yeah, it's all a bit of fantasy, and if you're willing to give this movie a shot, it's a lot of fun. It's a bit of a mix of things like The Never-Ending Story, Gremlins, Pokemon, essentially anything that you can think of that combines human and fantastical creatures into the same universe, maybe even something like Harry Potter. Not knowing anything about Japanese folklore might diminish some of the excitement that you'd probably normally get from a film like this, but otherwise there's something here for an older teen audience to definitely enjoy. It's definitely not something for the kids, as there's quite a bit of horror type monsters and a bit of mild sexual innuendo. Now, speaking of the monsters, this is the fun part of the film. The variety of the monsters. We get the standard human-shaped ones like Agi and the River Princess, but it's the more fantastical ones, such as the Umbrella, the Wall, literally a wall, the one-legged blacksmith, and of course all the machinery-type yokai. They're the really interesting ones. Now, what I really loved was the effects. 2005 Japanese movie means that there's still a lot of practical effects going around. They hadn't gone full CGI yet, but there are still some elements of CGI in the film, such as the yokai with the big long neck, and obviously all the compositing shots of all the other digital effects. Now, the little cat thing that rubs people's shins, that's clearly a puppet, and it reminds me a lot of Gizmo the Mogwai, except, well, strangely, it's probably not as well animated as Gizmo. Almost all the other monsters, definitely the monsters that have speaking parts, they're all makeup and practical effects, and it gives off a bit more of a traditional Japanese monster cinema vibe, and it keeps it in line with the yokai movies from the 1960s. But what I really liked was the stop motion. Now, this is an effect that I didn't think I would see in a modern film, and it's used with machine yokai. It's quite cool. It's awesome to see stop motion in a film, and clearly we've come a long way from the stop motion used in films like King Kong, I was going to say Donkey Kong, King Kong, and the Harryhausen's type stuff. However, it is a long film. It's over 2 hours and it starts to stretch itself just a little bit thin towards the end. Some scenes are either too long or just unnecessary, especially at the beginning, as the movie's trying to build up a bit of the storyline, but there's really not too much payoff for a lot of these storylines that are introduced at the start of the film at the end. But towards the end, when the Yokai War starts, it's quite a sight to see hundreds of thousands of monsters on the same screen at the same time. So The Great Yokai War from 2005, soon to be re-released from Arrow Films. What would I give it? Well, I would recommend it if you like Japanese fantasy films, but also if you liked some of the other films that I mentioned earlier on in the video, and especially if you're into movies or cool monster designs. It's not a movie for everyone, so something that I would recommend is to perhaps watch the trailer and see if that takes your interest. And if it does, then I would watch it. I think you might enjoy it. Let us know in the comments if you have seen this or are thinking of seeing this. Thank you again to Leo. I'm the Arty Dans, and thank you for watching this video review. Catch you next time.